Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to the Idiot Box. The 20th century brought us many things, and this is one of the more innovative influences on our world, for both very good and very bad. Here's a sticker, besides mean people suck and thank you for not smoking in my room, that I've put up. A Jack Kerouac quote here that you won't be able to read, that I'll read for you. It's right there. And it reads, "I saw that my page was a vast, glowing, empty page, and I could do anything I wanted." The significance here is that Kerouac was an optimist, an idealist, someone who believed in life. And in the last century, though, we had many great things, like his literature and the art of many others, we also had terrible things. The deadening influence of television on youth today speaks volumes, and that's why I put the sticker on the TV. And that's why I think it's very important that we remember that Jack Kerouac died in front of his TV, which to me seems very poetic and unfair that he didn't die on a fresh new page of his upcoming novel, that instead he was found dead in front of his TV, slumped over. When I first read Jack Kerouac, he changed my life. My life, in terms of self-realization, was pretty much pre-Kerouac and post-Kerouac, and it opened my eyes up to how beautiful being alive is, which is a very good thing. I mean, people get that to certain degrees from family and religion and other very important things, and I definitely had these factors that made me appreciate life. That Jack Kerouac was a turning point in terms of myself, in terms of what I wanted to do with my time on earth. He opened me up to my own potential in terms of artistic sensitivity, and his writing, it sort of gave the universe a kind of glow and gave my place in it a sort of purpose. The very idea of being an artist or a writer became the most adventurous idea, the most exciting and innovative way to utilize your own serendipitous existence. The fact that you've arrived here at all needs to be commemorated, needs to be appreciated, needs to be written down here. And his prose was alive with that excitement. It literally jumped off the page and performed jazz for me. He was very influenced by jazz in the late 40s and early 50s, and his prose really reflected what he found most exciting about music. And as has been often quoted, the art most other art aspires to is the art of music, because it is so intangible. And I'm going to read a journal entry from 1947 to reflect the way his prose was so musical and so idiosyncratic. Powerful winds that crack the boughs of November, and the bright, calm sun, untouched by the furies of the earth, abandoning the earth to darkness and wild forlornness, and night as men shiver in their coats and hurry home, and in the lights of home glowing in those desolate deeps. There are the stars, though, high and sparkling in a spiritual firmament. We will walk in the wind sweeps, gloating in the envelopment of ourselves, seeking the sudden grinning intelligence of humanity below these abysmal beauties. Now the roaring midnight fury and the creaking of our hinges and windows, now the winter, now the understanding of the earth and our being on it, this drama of enigmas and double depths and sorrows and grave joys, these human things in the elemental vastness of the wind-blown world. That's from a journal entry on the 12th of November 1947. And the character of Neil Cassidy, who he turned into the character, the real life Neil Cassidy turned into the character of Dean Moriarty in On the Road, was what a lot of people were mainly inspired by in reading the phenomenon On the Road. Since the 50s, it's been the landmark work people go to for Kerouac, and a lot of people who aren't touched by the literature are still find themselves gravitating towards the the sheer exuberance of the Dean Moriarty character, but I find the artist, the observer, Jack Kerouac, just as, if not more exciting, in his keenness to rhapsodize about his friend. I find that just as gleeful to read about as the fact that Dean/Neil is dancing all over the place and being charismatic and loving life to the fullest. I find the fact that Kerouac is compelled 1 inch further to actually write this down that bit more exciting than Neil living and spinning round and out of control. The fact that Kerouac would come to a candlelit room and write in this sort of poetic reverie, you know, at home with his mother and by the fireplace, and he'd sort of recollect and reflect on things at the same time as he'd try and live a wild, exuberant life. That's what I find extremely appealing. He had a self-mythologizing, romantic, instant reminiscing style, and it gave youth, back when the book was first published in 1957, On the Road, it gave youth an option they hadn't yet found through other artists at that time culturally, the option to find their lives beautiful, which is amazing. I mean, he inspired me as much, you know, in 2003, something like that, 2002, many years ago at this point when I first read On the Road. He inspired me to love my own life, and for that I'll be forever thankful. Not just you know, the word love is so loosely used. I mean, really, really, the idea that one could make the most of it and that it would be worth something, that really only occurred to me when I read Kerouac and saw how, at least in his youth, he idealistically believed in the meaning of life, that it meant something. In the looming shadow of death oncoming, life was the most beautiful spark in the darkness, and that's in such fervent early optimism. That's why his death puzzles me, because he died in such sad circumstances. He'd become a bloated, angry anti-Semite, spouting right-wing, nonsensical, drunken nonsense, and he was on TV and he looked like a mess, and he wasn't writing, his writing was getting sloppy, and he was just, by the time he died, I think it was his liver, I think he was only 47, which is stupidly young for someone who should have grown as old as Allen Ginsberg, who was still affecting the culture in the late 90s. It puzzles me and worries me that he had to become the tragic young hero when he'd actually overcome all kinds of depressions in his youth and had still found some sort of marrow of strength spiritually. It's not like he was always a naive idealist or a blind optimist. He'd felt pain, he'd seen darkness, but he'd gotten through that in his younger days, and the fact that in his older age, whatever was going on, circumstantially, the fact that he gave in and it ended badly, it's obviously, we can look at it from a very tragic point of view. It's hard not to. It is tragic. He was such a tattered remain of his former self when he died. It seems, I mean, we'll never know if he had glowing thoughts in his mind that weren't going down, but from everything externally, everything his friends say, he was, from his writing, from his mother, from all accounts, he was a wreck. And when Kerouac was 21, he wrote this poem to his best friend at the time, Sebastian Sampas. Comrade, cursed be the windswept stars, and the night be one as thunder. You've had your share of scars, comrade, we shan't go under. And that was when he was 21. He was so desperately in love with life. And I imagine when he died, it makes me happier to imagine him in front of the TV as he was, sort of struggling with this, not giving in easily, but fighting it in tortured internal monologue, akin to the prose in Big Sur, which is torturous to read, but eventually approaches cathartic. And I can imagine he was at that sort of crossroads, at that sort of a Mexican standoff in his mind, when he gave in. It comforts me to think that maybe up until his last seconds, he was fighting for dear life, like all the sportsmen he admired, like a good pitcher, like a good boxer. He was throwing in every last shot he had up until the very end, and that's probably what wasn't helping. It was the self-accusatory guilt and shame, and it was this same inquisitiveness when directed at the external world, in balance with being directed inwardly. That was what made him such a powerful literary figure. But I'd like to show you what I imagine could have been going through his mind before he died. A sad, sad death in front of the idiot box.